Hey everyone, welcome back to When Creatives Thrive, a Create Baltimore podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Rustin, and on this episode we feature the multi-hyphenate theater artist and writer, Belle Gaskin-Burr. Before we get going, make sure to like, comment, and follow where and when you can. It really helps us to keep telling creative stories. As a writer, Belle works to uplift through the content on Pop Culture Uncovered, a social and media commentary platform she helps to run. Her goal is to amplify underrepresented voices, advocate for equity, and give back to the city of Baltimore. Belle is also heavily invested in the Baltimore theater community. As a working actor and self-described performer who adapts, she continually hones her skills through both short-form and long-form improv. And as a director, Belle always encourages non-traditional performers to audition. She taps into her connection at pop culture conventions throughout the region to expand the pool of actors here in Baltimore and change perceptions about inclusivity in local performances. Belle's joined in conversation with Barbara Huck, Director of Arts Council Programming here at Create Baltimore.
Welcome to When Creatives Thrive. We are here today with Belle Burr, who is a multi-hyphenate performer. So lots of skills and professional experience in the performance realm. Do you want to give us a quick rundown of that, Belle?
Hi, everyone. I'm an actor. First and foremost, I moved to directing by complete accident. Mm-hmm. I'm a writer for Pop Culture Uncovered, and I also do poetry and short stories. But overall, I am a performer who adapts to what is needed at the time. Yeah, I ended up doing digital shorts. I've never directed a digital short. I've never filmed, but I ended up doing a series of digital shorts for Drop 3, Sketch and Improv. And it was like, well, we'll learn as we go.
Yeah. Oh, that's exciting. And speaking of improv, that's a whole other skill set.
Yeah.
Because acting and improvising are not the same skill set.
No, they are not.
And not every actor can improvise and not every improviser can act. But you have a lot of experience both between Drop 3 and American Immersion Theater?
Yes. So I've been with American Immersion Theater for going on, I want to say 6 years now. And are you familiar with Waiting for Guffman or This is Spinal Tap?
Yes.
Okay. So that's basically what we do. We have shows, I think it's about 10 shows right now, different set in different time periods. And what we do is we know the beginning, the middle, and the end, and then we improvise everything that happens in between. But we make sure that everything that happens within the beginning, middle, and the end. And it's a lot of fun. It can be challenging sometimes depending upon the audience, because this is live theater. And we do everything from, we have a main stage show in Linthicum, as well as we do corporate shows, we do shows, private shows, and everything. So it depends on the audience. And that is actually my favorite part, because it's nothing like getting someone who does not want to be involved whatsoever to break and laugh and genuinely enjoy themselves. So I genuinely love doing improv. I wouldn't say more than regular acting, but it's a different skill set. Mm-hmm. It's a different skill set, and it actually has helped me in other aspects. So it's helped me when I'm doing podcasts or with PCU or when I'm doing a live interview. The ability to improvise and deal with whatever happens. I'm not sure if you've ever been to a con, like a Comic Con.
I've been to small cons. I haven't been to any of the larger cons.
Well, let's just say that depending upon what's happening, things can get a little insane. Being able to pivot, and sometimes within moments, mm-hmm. because if you go to a con, if you've ever been to one, you will see that 9 times out of 10, you will be surprised the amount of performers who are just walking the floor. They're there to collect too. They're there to buy stuff and to see all the cosplayers in their outfits. Mm-hmm. You know, there was one year where we ran into the young man who plays Daredevil, and he was just walking around and no one realized it was him at all. And it was really, he was really into it, but he was just walking the floor because he wasn't in costume and he wasn't, Matt Murdock at that moment. So it was really fun to speak with him and kind of in a more relaxed setting. So doing improv, I think, has bettered me personally as an actor and as an interviewer.
That's wonderful. So PCU, Pop Culture Uncovered, you've mentioned. What is that?
Okay, so many moons ago, originally I was not a part of Pop Culture Uncovered. That would be Armand Hill and Pete Robertson and Harry Crossland. They were the original people who started Pop Culture Uncovered. And then Harry retired from it. And when he retired, he left his portion to me. I was just a writer, and I was very surprised. Now, Armand and Pete and I, over the course of the years, have become pretty much, as my husband calls us, the chaos triplets. There's a brain cell, and we share it. We are all people of the global majority. And in pop culture, unfortunately, that voice is not heard. That voice is not doing the reviews. As you, I'm sure, as somebody who's been following, as an actor yourself, and as someone who's with the arts, the situation with the Golden Globes and how a majority of the reviewers weren't people of color at all, and mostly men. And so what we basically started PCU to do is to review from a brown and Black and Indigenous point of view. And then we also want to make sure that the LGBTQIA community was included, because there are things that we're not going to see. One of our writers has spina bifida. And so he will notice things about how representation is for people with disabilities that I would not notice. My husband is an amputee, and same thing. He will notice things about how people are being represented, that things that would not even occur to me. And for my part, same thing. I'm a Black woman. I'm going to always be Black, no matter where I go. And there are things that I will notice about albums, about television. And I'm like, okay. You can definitely tell that the writing was written from a point of view of how people think Black people speak. A recent example, and this is an old show, and it's one of my favorites, Rizzoli and Isles. And there is a quote-unquote gang member episode, and I'm watching it, and it's so cringy to me because I was like, there are no Black writers on this show, and I can tell. I can tell. There's a difference between someone like a David Simon who makes the effort to learn, to immerse himself in these cultures, and who makes an effort to, more importantly, hire women and people of color to write for those characters. It does make a difference, and not just in what's on screen, but how it's critiqued. There are things that you as a woman, there's things you're going to notice about how a woman is represented that a man's just not going to notice. And those things are important, especially right now, to make sure that these things are highlighted. But also the joy. We do a cosplay spotlight. And we try to do one at least every month, if not more than that. And we make a point of highlighting disabled, Black, Indigenous, Asian, LGBTQIA cosplayers, because they are not seen. And the work that they're doing, there's one beautiful young lady who I met at Awesome Con, and she did a whole Hobbit outfit, but it was like a Hobbit Fae situation, and it was beautiful. And she made it a part of her wheelchair.
Oh.
It was so beautiful. It actually made me tear up because she just looked so amazing. And that's what I want people to see, that we are all here and we all deserve to be represented.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in the properties that you choose to review, highlighting things that might not otherwise get reviewed at all.
Yeah. We make a point of trying to do independent comics, independent film. Like we do, obviously we get sent the big budget things, We get sent the Fantastic Fours and the DCEU and all of that stuff. But personally, for me, I want to highlight smaller independent labels, smaller independent. I'm much more of an AQ4 girl, as a rule anyway. And that's not just because I love horror, which is, I could talk about how horror reflects culture all day long. But I think it's important. There's a lot of work that's being done that is not corporate. And unfortunately, especially at least in comics and film, all you hear about are the main groups. So you only hear about DC Comics and Marvel Comics. But Image Comics exist. And Image Comics is behind one of the best action film series to come out on Netflix. They are really, really good. And The Old Guard. That's Image. A lot of these smaller labels are doing really interesting things. They're writing characters from a lot of point of views. And one of the things I really love, especially about Image, is that unlike the big two, and I don't know how many people who are listening to this would even know this, the writers own their IP.
Oh.
So Greg Rucka, when he was shopping around making The Old Guard into a film, had final say on casting, had final say on directing. And that makes a difference in the quality. Because one of the major things about that film was that two of the characters are an old couple, 1,000-year-old couple, who happen to be two members of opposite sides of the Crusades. And they're men. And there were multiple times when that film was in development that they kept trying to cut that out. And he was like, absolutely not. I wrote it for a reason. I wrote that they were men of color, and I wrote that they were married for a reason. And so, unfortunately, you will have, and this is one of the things that's kind of a dear thing to my heart, especially after the death of George Perez. I don't know if you're familiar with George Perez at all. He basically created, for all intents and purposes, the Teen Titans. One of the best runs of Wonder Woman that ever came out when I was growing up. He was a wonderful man. Every time I met him, we ended up singing karaoke. But unfortunately, when he passed, there had to be money raised to help with his treatment. So all of these properties made massive amounts of money off of him and his work, but he didn't own his IP. And that is an ongoing issue in the comic and industry. And so that's another thing that PCU tries to highlight, is to make sure that the equity is happening, because how do you make literally millions of dollars off of a property and give the person who created the character a pittance? That makes no sense. And it is only in the comic book world that happens. That is another thing that PCU is really trying to highlight, is making sure people get credit for what they do.
That's important.
Yeah, I think
Just
so.
a small thing.
Just a little thing. Just a little thing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I appreciate highlighting the smaller and more independent and, artist-owned properties and organizations and labels. PCU also gets the opportunity to review some hyper-local things and collaborate with some really cool local organizations.
We make a point of trying to work with local bookstores and local comic book shops to highlight them as well. Speaking of, one of our dearest friends, Collectors Corner Maryland, suffered a recent loss.
Yeah.
And they were one of our first, hey, what do you need? What do you need? You can come here on Free Comic Book Day and interview writers. We'll set up a whole booth for you. And so, we try to have that kind of community support, and we try to give it back, which is another thing. PCU, we try to make sure, both Drop 3 and PCU try to make sure that we are giving back into our community and not just taking from. So Drop 3 does, switching gears a little, Drop 3 does a step out and walk for the American Diabetes Association. So we, as a cast, raise money for that every year, and we do the walk. And we try to raise as many other people out there. And then we have a little picnic.
Nice.
So that's kind of in our mission, is to highlight, in both cases, with Drop 3, is to get more Black and brown people on stage. Because comedy should be an always evolving thing. It should be. And having different voices in comedy is very important. So we are trying to make sure that we get women and people of the global majority in places where they can get seen, where their humor can get seen. And with PCU, I think that's kind of like, I'd never really thought about it, but I guess that's my personal mission, is to make sure that people are represented.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it that way, but yeah, I just, having lived so many different places, I'm an Army brat. My mom was active duty for most of my life growing up. And so having been the one in a lot of situations, I know what it's like to want to see yourself. And I think it's important that people hear other people's voices. I have long said that comic books and soap operas, of all things, were really important for that. I can honestly say, I think that there's a direct correlation between the fall of soaps and the rise of reality television and intolerance. On soap operas, you had the first person to have an abortion. You had the first gay couple. You had a trans couple. Bold and the Beautiful had the first trans main character in soap history. Growing up, my Nana always had on her shows. And so I saw people who didn't look like me, whose stories weren't mine. And one of the first super couples was a Black couple, Jesse and Angie. I remember when Ryan Phillippe played one of the first gay characters on television, on daytime soaps. And having that connection when people's stories are coming into your house every day. People who don't look like you. People who don't sound like you, whose ethnicity isn't the same as yours, whose background isn't the same, and you fall in love with them. And then you meet someone like them in real life. You're much more open to that person. So you have a character who is a trans character on The Bold and the Beautiful, and you see her struggle with telling her significant other this information, and someone trying to hold that over her head that she didn't tell them. And you empathize for her because of her fear of rejection. And suddenly, when you meet that trans neighbor, you think about all the things that character that you fell in love with went through. Same thing with comic books. When comic books were not as overpriced, it used to be a time you could get a comic book for $1.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my gosh. Well, my mom has some that were like 25 cents because I got that love for comic books from my mother. Honestly, she loved comic books. Her mother would take her to the bookstore. My grandmother would get her Agatha Christie novels, and she would give my mom $1 and say, as many comic books as you can get them. And back in the late 40s, you could get quite a few comic books for $1. And so that's where my love of comic books comes from. My mom still collects. She's in her 70s. Yeah. She still collects. It's so cute.
She also reviews for PCU.
She
Having
does.
that older perspective is important too.
I think it is because she sees things that I just do not notice at all. And it's very important. And I'm very blessed that I have a parent who actually fully supports what I do and also is actively involved. But kids aren't just buying comic books like that anymore. My godsons buy manga. They don't buy comic books anymore. Which when I was a kid, I wouldn't give me $10, I would get an entire comic book shop's worth of stuff. The pricing out of comic books, the fall of soaps, I do think has an effect. When people are represented, every day. It changes how you view things. I feel like in some ways we are, in fact, less representative now than we were 30 years ago. So that's a thing that PCU also likes to tackle. It's like, when was the shift?
Yeah.
When was the shift happening? And why?
I think representation is a huge piece that relates to so many other things. And it's nice to see that in all of your projects, like that being a focus. And I think another thing that I notice from all of your endeavors is creating opportunities. It's not just about representation, but also creating opportunities for local artists. So what made you want to be involved in the underfunded, under-resourced world of, arts administration, to put it nicely?
I didn't see enough people like me. There's so much talent in Baltimore. I was actually speaking to a neighbor about that. And he was like, I wonder if Baltimore really has an identity. And I said, it's an artist city.
Yes.
I said, that is what the amount of artists that have come out of the city in every form, fashion, television, film, theater, writing, sculpture, culinary is astronomical per capita. I think I could honestly say, I think it's about even with New York and California. Having lived all three places, the amount of times that I have, since I've gotten into directing, again, by accident, when I've had auditions, the people who show up for the auditions, people who are, I would say, established in the theater community, were surprised about the range of people I was able to pull for my auditions. And it's because I'm not narrowing down my prospects. I'm not self-inflicting wounds, as it were. And what I mean by that is what I've noticed, and this is something I've noticed since I was a teenager in Baltimore, the same 10 people get cast. And
often,
so, yeah. And so when I would audition, when I would have auditions, I made a point of reaching out to people who wouldn't be reached out to. So I've met cosplayers who are amazing actors. And I don't think, if you're not in the community, I don't think people understand what cosplayers have to do. Yes, it is about being in the costume and making the costume and all of that. But a lot of them are paid to be at booths, to bring attention to the booths. And so they have to stay in character for 8 hours.
And improvise when people come up to talk to them.
Yes. One of my closest friends used to cosplay as Rogue. It worked in two ways. Rogue is her favorite character. She doesn't like to be touched.
Nice.
So that was the perfect character for her to cosplay as. Yes. And she would stay in character all day long. One of my friends cosplays as Zatanna from the DC universe, who's a magician so she would do magic tricks as Zatanna all day long. And she would speak backwards when she did her spells, because that's how Zatanna does her spells. She speaks backwards. And so she would do that, and she would stay in character all day long. That's the person you want to audition for a show. One of the things I noticed is that there's an entrancance to trying something different, reaching out to different communities. There's so much talent in this town. And that kind of mindset of not even considering, that is kind of what made me want to get into the administrative side.
Yeah.
Because you're cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Mm-hmm. And I think, too, especially in a discipline like theater, where there is the opportunity to do shows that have been done hundreds of times before, why would you cast the same kind of people who have historically played those roles? How are you going to get a different story out of that? And some of the best productions of, for example, Shakespeare, which has been done ad nauseum for hundreds of years, some of the best productions have been, quote, non-traditional casting, quote. And those are the ones that stand out to me. Those are the ones that resonate and that made me see something in that story that maybe I hadn't seen before, or a character jumped out in a way that never thought of that with their relationship. There is so much to be gained from just representing those different viewpoints, like you were saying.
Yeah, I remember when I was casting Measure for Measure for the Overly Arts Fest, and I wanted a non-binary person to play one of the characters. And it changed the whole dynamic of the show. When I did Stop Kiss, I made a point, and thank God I did, of casting someone who was non-binary as George. They were the understudy. They ended up becoming the lead, and they knocked it out of the park every single night. To not open the door to other people. I've never understood the mentality of I got mine, you get yours. I have been wonderfully supported by my parents, mostly my mom. My dad too, but not as much. He wanted me to get a real job. Which is hilarious because I've been a working paid actor since I was like 8.
That's no small feat.
No, especially when I do not want to live in New York at all. So I've been supported by my mother. I've been supported by my spouse. There was a brief time where I did work in corporate America, and I was good at it. And I was miserable. I was so miserable. And I remember coming home one day and him going, I'm going to need you to quit. I was like, well, we need the money. He was like, no.
I need you happy.
I need you to be happy. So because I had that support, how could I not try to open doors for someone else coming up behind me?
Yeah.
So that they don't have to struggle in the ways that I did. I remember one of my very earlier auditions in my teens where I was told flat out by the casting director and the director and the stage manager that I was, in fact, the best person to audition for the part, but that Baltimore wasn't ready for a Black Mina Harker.
What?
Yep. So even though I gave the best audition, and I was like 14, and they were like, you're perfect. We can't cast you. At least they were honest. But Baltimore wasn't ready for a Black Mina Harker. And that stayed with me. It's been 30 years, and that stayed with me because it told me, and it was a good thing. It was a good lesson to learn, that I'm going to have to fight tooth and nail. One of my teachers, Kay Callan, she played Superman's mom on Lois and Clark. And she drilled that into our heads. You are going to have to fight, especially if you're Black, especially if you're Hispanic. You're going to have to fight tooth and nail to just get in the room. And then you're going to have to be twice as good to stay in that room. And so if I can make it easier for someone coming up behind me to not have to struggle the way I did, and in some cases still do, if that's the legacy that I leave when I leave this earth, then I'm okay with that. Yeah.
I think that sounds like a very valuable, and noble's not the right word, but a very valuable thing. So I think that work is very, very important. And I'm glad that there are people who are putting in that work, because it is a lot of work to go against the grain and to open up spaces where people are resistant to doing something differently, like you said, or seeing a story differently, or challenging their own preconceptions about what a role is or should be and how it should look. So let's go back to, you mentioned being a working actor since you were 8. I think it's so important, again, for representation, to show that you don't have to go to New York or Los Angeles, or even now like Chicago or Atlanta for acting opportunities or for a quote career in performance. And that, you know, like you said, Baltimore not only has the talent, but like has the industry.
Yeah. There's so much work available here if you know where to look. And, you know, I auditioned. Now, the Murder Mystery Company / the American Immersion Theater is a nationwide company. So they have locations in Atlanta. They have, you know, some of my friends from the troupe, the Baltimore troupe, have moved to Atlanta, New York, LA, and are performing there as well. But it is possible to work here. There's a lot of theater companies here, and it is possible to work in Baltimore and do quality work and not have to be constantly running to New York to do stuff. Now, granted, I do audition for stuff in New York, and I am auditioning again for stuff in New York. I kind of had to take a break because life was lifing. But I'm not going to stress myself. And I think that brought back my joy of acting as well. It's a job. What's that quote from Rockstar by Cypress Hill? It's a fun job, but it's still a job. And what I found basing myself in Baltimore is that I get breaks. I remember why I love doing this. And then I get renewed to do it again, as opposed to constantly being in the rat race, as it were. So it's not easy. I would never lie to you and say that it's easy to be a working actor here, but that's the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Once you remember that it is a job and you have to find the joy in it. And for some people that's like me, I can't do anything but theater.
I also found that Baltimore has an extremely rich small theater scene. And there are so many different performance opportunities and different kinds of performance too. Different, you know, theater companies that produce different kinds of shows, you know, more experimental things, devised theater. And there's a lot of new works that are being supported. There are so many local theaters and companies that support brand new 10-minute plays or playwright development or things like that. And again, I agree with you. Not that it's easy and not that there aren't areas of improvement that could happen to support the different creative ecosystems here in Baltimore. But I am very grateful that Baltimore does seem to value its artists. And this is a town of artists. Like this is a creative city.
It very much is. I think that's the first thing I think of when I think of Baltimore is how creative people are and how many different things. You can go pretty much anywhere in the city and find someone doing art, some type of art. And I think what I would personally would love to do is get more spaces for that to happen in more areas where there's not the representation. So, for example, where I live is Belle or Edison, and there's a couple of abandoned properties there that are still in pretty good condition. And I would love it if we could get those turned into community centers and artist space. If you make the opportunities, I guarantee you people will come.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. This has been an excellent conversation. And I'm so glad that out of all the places you could have ended up, you ended up here in Baltimore.
Thank you. I just want it to be the best Baltimore can be. And if I can help with that, then that's what I'm going to do.
Thanks so much to Belle for joining the podcast, and thanks to you for listening. Remember, if you're a creative person with a story to share, reach out to me at srustin@promotioninarts.org to be featured on the podcast. And as always, when creatives thrive, we all rise.